Empieza el llanto de la guitarra. Se rompen las copas de la madrugada. Empieza el llanto de la guitarra. Llora por cosas lejanas. Arena del sur caliente que pide camelias blancas. Llora flecha sin blanco, la tarde sin mañana y el primer pájaro muerto sobre la rama. Oh, guitarra, corazón malherido por 5 espadas.
La Guitarra is from a sequence of poems inspired directly by Cantejondo, by deep song. And the culmination of this interest was the Gypsy Ballads, the Romancero Gitano, published in 1928, which is certainly Lorca's most famous book of poems. They're tapping a traditional source, but adding elements that derive from the 20th century. And Spaniards listening to these ballads recited grasped immediately that these are traditional poems with a modern flavor.
Las piquetas de los gallos vienen cavando la aurora. Cuando por el monte oscuro baja soledad montona. Cobre amarillo su carne, huele a caballos y a sombra. Yunques ahumados su peso, gimen canciones redondas. Soledad, ¿por quién pregunta? Se acompaña ya a estas horas. Quien pregunte, dime, ¿a ti qué te importa? Vengo a buscar lo que busco, mi alegría y mi persona. Soledad de mis pesares, caballo que se desboca, al fin encuentra la mar y se lo tragan las olas. No me recuerdes la mar, que la pena negra brota en las tierras de aceituna, entre rumor de las hojas. El río baja cantando, volante de azul y hoja, con flores de calabaza, la nueva luz se corona. Oh pena de los gitanos, pena limpia y siempre sola. Oh pena de cauce oscuro y madrugada remota.
He loved the earth, the mountains and the rivers, and his imagery draws its strength from observed reality. In a way, he's a very realistic poet, and the metaphors that seem complex, beneath the complexity, there's always this direct physical contact.
Right now, I'm in the Huerta de San Vicente, in the plain of Granada. There is so much jasmine and nightshade in the garden that every morning we all wake up with lyrical headaches. And yet, nothing is excessive. That's the amazing thing about Andalusia.
The Huerta de San Vicente, St. Vincent's orchard, was the Lorca's summer residence. In those days, before the war, the Huerta was on the outskirts of Granada. So when you looked from here up towards the town, the ground gradually rose and rose until you could see at the end the Alhambra and the Generalife. Now, of course, these wretched capitalists have thrown up this appalling row of tall blocks of houses. He was a poet, which is a disgraceful thing to be in a grenadine bourgeois setting. And you know, he very badly wanted to be a professional musician, and the family was opposed to that. His parents thought that their children should have university careers, the careers that they hadn't had, and they insisted that Lorca should have a university career. So he eventually finishes his law degree with the help of several benevolent professors. People say that his father only understood in 1933 just how brilliant his son was when Lorca sent a check from Buenos Aires when his plays were a great success, and he sent a huge check to his father. His father opened the check and said, "Hombre, el niño vale mucho. My boy is doing well." But I suspect that they didn't really understand who Federico was. Lorca's mother had been a primary school teacher before she married, and she set very high standards for her children. She despaired of Federico, who was hopeless academically, unlike his younger brother Francisco, who always came first in everything. They were all musicians. They were wonderful people in the family, people who could play the piano without ever having learnt to play the piano, people who could play musical instruments, people who could recite poetry, invent poems. And Lorca was the fine flowering of that Garcia family. This is Lorca's bedroom, and it's where he wrote. It's a marvelous balcony looking out over the garden, over the Sierra Nevada, and the desk at which he wrote Blood Wedding, while listening to a cantata by Bach, Quartet Auf, incessantly, all day and all night. It's said that he wrote the play in 15 days, virtually at a sitting, hardly sleeping, and just listening to this music.
I must tell you that I hate the organ, the lyre, and the flute. I love the human voice. I'm amazed when I consider that the emotion of composers like Bach is based on and sustained by a perfect mathematics.
And above his desk hangs the poster of the Barraca, the university traveling theater company he directed. Of course, the Barraca was set up by the Republic, and when the idea arose to take plays to villages where no theater had ever been seen, Lorca was thought of as a potential director of the theater, and of course it appealed to him greatly, the idea of taking plays and setting up theaters in the marketplaces of ancient Spain as part of the Republic's program to educate people who had never been educated and who had never had the opportunity to see plays.
Tonight, I am not speaking as the playwright or the poet, but as an ardent, passionate believer in the theatre of social action. The theatre is one of the most expressive and useful instruments for building up a country. It is the barometer of its greatness or decline.
Today's Barraca Theatre Company continues Lorca's mission, but actually it specializes in putting on Lorca's own plays, those plays of Lorca's especially, which derive from the tradition of Andalusian puppet theatre.
Lorca decía que el teatro estaba en manos de los comerciantes y que así no se podía hacer teatro. También hay una diferencia, ellos hacían generalmente teatro clásico y nosotros hacemos exclusivamente teatro de Lorca. Porque bueno, entonces Lorca pensaba que no era correcto utilizar el dinero del Estado en estrenar sus propias obras. Bueno, también hay una diferencia, la Barraca estuvo en su época subvencionada por el Estado, nosotros no estamos subvencionados por el Estado.
Y saludemos hoy en la Barraca a don Cristóbal, el andaluz, primo del bululú gallego, cuñado de la tía Norica de Cádiz.
El retablo de don Cristóbal es una obra que hacemos en realidad para los niños, pero también para todos los públicos. Pero los niños especialmente la entienden muy bien. Y está escrita originalmente para Guiñol, como una farsa. Y queremos conservar un estilo muy inocente, muy ingenuo, como el teatro que Federico hacía cuando era niño, que hacía Guiñol en su casa, en el jardín, con sus primas.
¡Ay, qué jamoncitos tiene por delante y por detrás!
What about his school days? Were they happy?
Yeah, I think that other people felt that he was marvelously happy, but in some of the early poems, he says, for example, there's one poem called Balada Triste, a sad ballad. In the poem, he addresses himself to these children, and he says, Yo siempre fui intranquilo, niños buenos del Prado. I was always uneasy as a child. Lorca was capable of immense happiness, but beneath that, there was a tragic sense of life. When Lorca became aware that he wasn't like most of his other male friends, when he became aware of his homosexuality, there's no doubt that he suffered agonies.
When a subject is too lengthy or contains a poetically stale emotion, I resolve it with drawing. They are not good. At times I despair. I see that I'm not fit for anything. Perhaps one day I will be able to express the extraordinary, real drawings that I dream.
Over his bed he had a painting of the Virgin of the Seven Sorrows. I think he loved the Virgin, the Mother of God, that mother who's so lacking in the Protestant tradition, the mother who knew that her son was to be crucified, the mother who understands about suffering, the soft mother, quite different to the harsh authoritarian father, God that Lorca rejected during his adolescence. Lorca never lost his childhood love of the rituals and ceremonies of the Catholic Church, and you've only got to see a Holy Week procession to understand why. For him it was pure theatre. And of course, he was also intrigued by the sexual ambiguity of many of the Church's saints and martyrs.
San Miguel, lleno de encajes en la alcoba de tu torre, enseña sus bellos muslos ceñidos por los faroles. San Miguel canta en los vidrios, efebo de 3000 noches, fragante de agua colonia y lejano de las flores.
One of Lorca's early biographers, who knew him very well, Marcelo Clare, she said that the greatest cross that Federico had to bear in life was to hide from his mother the fact of his homosexuality.
I too am accustomed to suffer for things that people don't understand or suspect. Between one person and another, there are spider threads that little by little turn into wires and even bars of steel. When death separates us, there remains a bloody wound in the place of each thread.
Porque duermes solo, pastor. Porque duermes solo, pastor. En mi colcha de lana dormirías mejor.
Frustration, erotic frustration, people searching for their identity, unable to find it. All these characters in Lorca who are searching for love and never find it. I mean, I could give you a catalogue beginning in the early poems, running right through Doña Rosita, the characters in Blood Wedding, and Yerma herself.
Colcha de oscura piedra, pastor. Y tu camisa de escarcha, pastor. Juncos grises del invierno, la noche de tu cama. Los robles ponen agujas, pastor. Debajo de tu almohada, pastor. Y si oyes voz de mujer es la rota voz del agua. Pastor, pastor, ¿qué quiere el monte de ti, pastor? Monte de hierbas amargas, ¿qué niño te está matando? La espina de la retama.
But I think the women in Lorca, who tend to be the protagonists of his work, they're real women of flesh and blood. They're not just homosexuals masked as women. But I think that Lorca's predicament as a homosexual in that terribly intolerant society helped him to understand the sufferings of other people, and particularly of Spanish women.
Para vivir en paz se necesita estar tranquilo.
¿Y tú no lo estás?
No lo estoy.
Desvía la intención.
Es que no conoces mi modo de ser. Las ovejas en el redil y las mujeres en su casa. Tú sales demasiado. ¿No me has oído decir esto siempre?
Justo. Las mujeres dentro de sus casas cuando las casas no son tumbas. Cuando las sillas se rompen y las sábanas de hilo se gastan con el uso. Pero aquí no. Cada noche cuando me acuesto encuentro mi cama más nueva, más reluciente, como si estuviera recién traída de la ciudad.
Tú misma reconoces que debo razón al dejar, que tengo motivos para estar alerta.
¿Alerta de qué? En nada te ofendo. Vivo sumisa a ti, lo que sufro lo guardo pegado a mis carnes. Y cada día que pase será peor.
Is there something in the theme of Yerma which was perceived as attacking Spanish society?
You know, another poet, Antonio Machado, said there are two Spains, like that, completely separate and enemies. And Yerma, just this beautiful poem about a woman who don't have a baby, who can't have a baby, was such a provocation for this Spain black and terrible, that even during the life of Lorca, he was very, very hated, very. In all his plays, there is a strong felt of freedom and justice and sexuality, all the very dangerous things. ¡Ay, qué prado de pena! ¡Ay, qué puerta cerrada la hermosura! Que pido un hijo que sufrir, y el aire me ofrece dalias de dormida luna. Esos dos manantiales que yo tengo de leche tibia son en la espesura de mi carne dos pulsos de caballo que hacen latir la rama de mi angustia.
Much of his work is about frustration. Yes. Does that make him a pessimistic writer at all for you?
No, I don't think so. When I think about him, it's always about someone who is so hopeful, lleno de esperanza, hopeful, with humor and love for the people, with a kind of laughing regard about all of us.
He's also a very passionate writer. Is that something that appeals to you as a performer?
Yes, too, because we are very passionate and very violent and all these primitive qualities. And he explained the very deep and subtle things in the middle of this passion and violence.
Lorca felt stifled in Granada, which was a narrow-minded city, and when he was 21, he managed to escape to Madrid. And in Madrid, the capital, he immediately felt at home. He came into contact with a wide range of new people, exciting people from the Spanish provinces and from Europe. And he lived at the Residencia de Estudiantes, the students' residence, famous students' residence, which was the nearest thing in Spain to an Oxbridge college. Here's another wretched car. And it was his home in Madrid.
How would he be traveling? By horse?
Lorca was terrified of driving, terrified of motor cars, terrified to cross the street. He had a rather gammy left leg and was never seen to run in his life and was terrified of crossing the street. Lorca's relationship with Buñuel and Dalí is absolutely vital, not only in Lorca's life, but in the life of the three of them. It is the most vital triangle in contemporary Spanish art, I think.
Pero desde luego eran unas personalidades tremendas, sobre todo Federico García Lorca. La personalidad de García Lorca era arrolladora, era una cosa excepcional, hasta el extremo de que yo creo, y muchos opinan lo mismo, que la gran obra de arte de García Lorca era su propio yo, era su persona, su personalidad, que para mí sobrepasa su propia obra poética y teatral. De modo que, claro, era gente llena de ocurrencias y, en fin, que daba una vivacidad a la vida residencial extraordinaria.
Dicen incluso que
y cuando Federico se sentaba al piano en el salón de la residencia, pues en fin, eso era ya... Él manaba música por todas partes, entonces cuando entraba en una reunión él llevaba consigo el arrebato, inmediatamente se convertía en el centro de atención de todos los presentes. Y cuando se iba había un descenso brusco de altitud. En la obra de la residencia hay una influencia británica, evidentemente.
Se bebían cantidades ingentes de té, por lo visto.
De té, se tomaba mucho té.
Sería otra costumbre
británica.
Era la
bebida, sí. Se solían formar tertulias en las habitaciones y el té era la bebida
Lorca tiene un dibujo,
predominaba.
Lorca tiene un dibujo que llama la desesperación del té, ¿no? Porque la gente pide más té, más té, más té.
Each day I appreciate Dali's talent even more. He seems to me unique, and he possesses a serenity and a clarity of judgment about whatever he's planning to do that is truly moving. He makes mistakes and it doesn't matter. He's alive. His denigrating intelligence combines with his disconcerting childishness in such an unusual way that it is absolutely captivating and original.
Quizá conviene más acentuar lo que hay en la relación entre dos jóvenes con una vocación tan intensa como sintieron los dos y que llegará a tener valores recíprocos, de tal manera que Dalí va a hacer poesía y Federico va a dibujar y a pintar.